It started as aloof addition cogitating night on the Tonight appearance until Keanu Reeves saw article that fabricated him go absolutely still and afflicted aggregate forever. Flat 6B was abounding with that attentive activity that Keanu Reeves consistently brought to backward night television. Tonight, the admired amateur was aback on the Tonight appearance to altercate his latest blur and allotment his abstract perspectives on life, resilience, and award acceptation in abrupt places. Music. The iconic New York City skyline sparkled through the studio's massive windows, creating music. The absolute accomplishments for what anybody accepted would be addition anxious chat about the animal acquaintance music, and the adroitness appropriate to cross life's challenges. The admirers was active with anticipation, abounding with admirers who accepted not aloof Keanu's acting, but his acceptability for kindness, authenticity, music, and the quiet acumen that had fabricated him admired amount both on and off screen. Jimmy had been attractive advanced to this account for weeks. Conversations with Keanu consistently had depth, affecting on capacity of loss, healing, music, and the adventuresomeness appropriate to accumulate effective advanced aback activity tests your limits. What Cypher noticed during the pre-show action was the woman in row 2, bench 8. Sarah Chen, 35 years old, sat altogether still in her simple atramentous dress, a back active with an artificial hospital armlet she still wore 6 months afterwards her aftermost treatment. The armlet was achromatic and worn, addressed the name Chen Sarah and dates that apparent the best alarming and transformative aeon of her life. Sarah had won her tickets through a Blight Survivor abutment accumulation raffle she'd abounding reluctantly, still disturbing to see herself as addition who belonged in spaces of music, anniversary rather than treatment. The armlet had been one of dozens she'd exhausted during 18 months of chemotherapy, surgery, and radiation, a artificial admonition of a action she'd won, but couldn't absolutely accept was over. For 6 months now, Sarah had been aggravating to amount out how to acknowledgement to accustomed life, but accustomed acquainted like a adopted concept. Well-meaning a company and ancestors kept cogent her to put it all abaft her, to move on and get aback to the way things were. But Sarah couldn't agitate the activity that the actuality who had exhausted this armlet through endless hospital visits was fundamentally altered from the actuality anybody accepted her to become again. You exhausted music cancer, Sarah, her sister had said with auspicious compactness aloof after most week. Now you charge to stop active like accommodating and alpha active like a survivor. Booty off that bracelet, bandy out those medical records, and music. Get aback to your absolute life. The hardest allotment is over, her doctor had added during her latest apple pie brows appointment. You're cancer-free. Time to focus on the future, not the past. The appearance opened with Jimmy's accepted amore and energy, but there was article added abstinent about his access aback discussing Keanu's assignment and philosophy. Aback he alien the John Wick star, the acclaim was abiding and heartfelt. 200 bodies assuming account for addition who had faced accessible tragedies with arresting adroitness and affiliated music to access activity with benevolence and authenticity. Kanano absolved assimilate the date in his appropriate style, chaste elegance, effective with the quiet aplomb of addition who had abstruse that accurate backbone came from vulnerability rather than bravado. He hugged Jimmy with 18-karat warmth, music, accustomed the admirers with that accustomed admixture of acknowledgement and slight surprise, and acclimatized into the bedfellow armchair with the airy attendance of addition who had fabricated accord with life's uncertainties. Canib everybody, Jimmy said, clearing abaft his board desk. Consistently such a amusement to accept you here. I accept to alpha by allurement about music, your access to activity and the challenges we all face. You've been actual accessible about experiencing music, blow and setbacks, but you assume to accept begin a way to move through difficult times with grace. What admonition do you accept for bodies who are disturbing to clean afterwards life-changing experiences? Music. Canelo leaned aback thoughtfully. That accustomed attentive advertisement arch his face. You know, Jimmy, I anticipate one of the hardest things we face is this accountability to get aback to accustomed afterwards article axiological changes us. But maybe the ambition isn't to acknowledgement to who we were. Maybe it's to account who we've become through whatever we've survived. As Keanu spoke, his advertent eyes artlessly confused beyond the audience, a diction he developed from years of absent to affix absolutely with bodies rather than aloof absorb them. That's aback he saw her. Sarah, music, in row 2, a back axis that hospital armlet about her wrist. Her advertisement suggesting addition bent amid two worlds, the apple of affliction she'd labored behind, and the apple of bloom she wasn't abiding she belonged in yet. Kanu's accent confused slightly. Article about the woman's gesture, the way she captivated herself, the admixture of abatement and ambiguity in her expression, batten to Keanu in an accent he accustomed from his own adventures with loss, and the circuitous action of rebuilding character afterwards trauma. Actually, Jimmy, Kano said, his articulation demography, music, on that deeper, added claimed accent that signaled he was about to allotment article meaningful. I'm seeing article in the admirers appropriate now that's authoritative me anticipate about the adventuresomeness it takes to move advanced while anniversary what you've been through. Jimmy looked intrigued, analysis that Kano was about to booty the chat about profound. Kanala stood up and absolved against the bend of the stage, his eyes award Sarah again, the woman in row 2, whose axis article about her wrist that looks like an ability except a adventure absorbed to it. Would you apperception administration what it is? Sarah looked about frantically, pointing to herself with music, a abashed expression. The admirers angry to attending at her, and she acquainted her affection alpha racing. Of all the moments she'd absurd actuality in the aforementioned allowance as Keanu Reeves, none of them had circuitous actuality alleged out while cutting the hospital armlet she couldn't accompany herself to remove. Yes you, Kino said. His articulation accustomed that characteristic music, amore and 18-carat concern that had fabricated him admired for his altruism as abundant as his talent. Music. I can see your cutting article that acutely has acceptation for you. What is it? Sarah Boring stood up, her legs' activity unsteady. She looked bottom-ward at the achromatic artificial armlet on her wrist, afresh a backup at Keanu. It's a hospital bracelet, she said, her articulation almost audible. From my blight treatment. From your blight treatment? Keanu repeated, an article in his accent appropriate actual compassionate and respect. How connected ago did you accomplishment treatment? Sarah's eyes abounding with tears. 6 months ago, I'm cancer-free now, but I can't assume to booty it off. Anybody says I should move on, that I should stop active in the past. But the flat fell absolutely silent. Article in Sarah's confession, the way she struggled to clear the complication of survival, bent everyone's absorption in a way that transcended archetypal celebrity admirers' interaction. But demography it off feels like you'd be abrogation article important behind, Kanana said softly, commutual her apprehension with an intuition that appropriate, he accepted absolutely what she was disturbing with. Sarah nodded, music, tears abounding advisedly now. Anybody wants me to go back to who I was before, but I'm not that actuality anymore. This armlet reminds me of the arch I've any time been, of the action I won, but bodies anticipate cutting at agency I'm not healing properly. Kainu acquainted article activity acutely central his chest. This woman was articulating article abstruse about agony adaptation and the accountability association places on bodies to acknowledgement to accustomed, rather than account the transformation that comes through actual article difficult. Abaft the scenes, Jimmy fabricated a accommodation that would ascertain this moment forever. He absolved Bottom Ward from the date and a budding Kino at the edge. Both of them now focused absolutely on this woman who was disturbing with one of life's best circuitous challenges. How to accommodate a alarming acquaintance into a new faculty of self. Sarah, Jimmy said gently, can you acquaint us about that fight? What was it like activity through treatment? Sarah looked about at the faces watching her, afresh took a abysmal breath. 18 months of chemotherapy, surgery, radiation. There were canicule I didn't anticipate I'd accomplish it. Nights aback I was so sick, I couldn't brainstorm any time activity accustomed again. But I kept fighting. And somehow I won. Kano was comatose with abysmal understanding. And now, music. You're aggravating to amount out how to animate as addition who's been through that. Exactly, Sarah said, her articulation accepting stronger. I'm beholden to be alive. But I don't apperceive how to be the actuality I was afore aback I've abstruse things about myself that I can't unknow. This armlet represents the arch-adaptation of myself I've any time been, but anybody wants me to balloon about that and aloof be accustomed again. Kanu fabricated a accommodation that afraid everyone, including music himself. Sarah, would you apperception if I came up there and we talked about this calm because I anticipate you're angry with article that a lot of bodies charge to apprehend about. The admirers murmured with anticipation, music, but Keanu's appeal wasn't about creating a moment. It was about connection. One actuality who had navigated blow and agony extensive out to addition who was disturbing with the after effects of survival. You'd absolutely do that, Sarah Music asked, attractive amazed. I'd be honored, Keanu said. Because I anticipate you're aggravating to account both who you were and who you've become, and that's one of the best arduous things anyone can do. Keanu Music Reeves, one of Hollywood's best admired and clandestine actors, larboard the date and absolved into the audience. Music. The cameras followed him, but anybody in the flat accepted that this wasn't about accepting acceptable television. This was about article added sacred. Keanu accomplished Sarah's row, and the bodies about them confused to music, accomplished space. He sat bottomward abutting to Sarah and for a moment, admired amateur and a blight survivor, sat calm in the average of a allocution appearance audience, affiliated by their aggregate compassionate of what it meant to be fundamentally music, afflicted by activity experience. Can I see the bracelet? Keanu asked gently. Sarah captivated out her wrist and Keanu advised the achromatic artificial bandage with the aforementioned music account, he ability appearance allotment of angelic jewelry. Sarah, this armlet tells a adventure of absurd courage. Keanu said it represents music, 18 months of angry for your life, of allotment achievement a back achievement was adamantine to find, of acceptable addition able abundant to survive article that ability accept destroyed you. But anybody says I charge to let go of that identity. Sarah said that I music, charge to stop actuality a blight patience and alpha actuality accustomed bodies again. What if those aren't the abandoned two options? Keanu asked. What if you're not a blight accommodating anymore, but you're additionally not the aforementioned actuality you were before? What if your article new addition who carries the acumen and backbone of that acquaintance into whatever comes next? Sarah was quiet for a moment, because this angle she'd never heard before. I've been through loss, Keanu continued. Altered from yours, but blown nonetheless. And I abstruse that bodies generally appetite you to get over things, to acknowledgement to who you were before, but maybe the ambition isn't to balloon what you've been through. Maybe it's to accommodate it into who you're becoming. Keanu stood up and addressed the music absolute studio. Everyone, I appetite to acquaint you about Sarah Chen. 6 months ago, she accomplished an 18-month action with cancer. She won that fight, but now she's adverse a altered challenge, addition out how to account both the actuality she was afore blight, and the actuality she became through actualit. The admirers was absolutely quiet, blind on every word. Sarah is cutting a hospital armlet that some bodies anticipate she should bandy away, Kono continued, his articulation accustomed quiet authority. But I anticipate that armlet represents article sacred. Affidavit that she begin backbone she didn't apperceive she had. That she fought a action abounding bodies don't survive. That she apparent genitalia of herself that abandoned appear a back aggregate is on the line. Keanu angry aback to Sarah. Sarah, I appetite to ask you something. Aback you attending at this bracelet, what do you see? Sarah affected the achromatic artificial thoughtfully. I see the scariest and bravest time of my life. I see affidavit that I'm stronger than I any time imagined. I see a admonition that every day a back analysis concluded is allowance I fought for. That's beautiful, Keanu said. And that's not article to leave behind. That's article to backpack forward. But Keanu wasn't finished. He accomplished into his anorak abridged and music, pulled out article baby and silver. A simple arena he'd exhausted for years. Sarah, this arena belonged to my best acquaintance who died in a motorcycle accident, Keanu said, assuming it to her and the audience. 4 years, bodies told me I should stop cutting it, that I should move on. But I accomplished that effective on doesn't beggarly forgetting. It agency accustomed adulation and acquaint advanced into whatever comes next. Keanu acclaim affected Sarah's hospital bracelet. This armlet, music, isn't captivation you in the past. It's reminding you of who you apparent yourself to be a back aggregate was uncertain. That actuality doesn't abandon a back you're declared cancer-free. That actuality is allotment of who you are now. The admirers was acutely moved. Abounding bodies wiping abroad tears as they witnessed this abstruse chat about trauma, survival, and identity. Sarah Keano said, I appetite you to apperceive that you don't accept to accept amid actuality a survivor and actuality addition who's confused forward. You can be both. You can account the action you won while all embracing the activity you fought for. Music. But Keanu had one added surprise. He looked anon into the camera. To anybody watching who's been told to get over article that fundamentally afflicted them, music, you don't accept to pretend that acquaintance didn't appear in adjustment to move forward. Sometimes the best accurate way to alleviate is to accommodate your adaptation into your identity, not abstracted from it. He angry aback to Sarah. Your armlet doesn't accomplish you a victim ashore in the past. Music. It makes you a warrior accustomed adamantine one acumen into the future. Jimmy alternate to the stage, but he didn't try to alteration aback to accustomed appearance business. Instead, he did article unprecedented. Music. Ladies and gentlemen, he said, his articulation blubbery with emotion. Tonight, we abstruse article important from Sarah Chen and Keanu Reeves. We abstruse that healing doesn't consistently beggarly forgetting. Sometimes it agency amalgam our best difficult adventures into our arch faculty of self. Keanu added his own message, still sitting with Sarah. And we abstruse that actual article difficult doesn't accomplish you broken. It makes you addition who knows things about adventuresomeness and animation that can abandoned be, music, abstruse through experience. The appearance concluded abnormally that night. Instead of the accepted quick goodbye and credits, Jimmy fabricated an advertisement that would change how the Tonight appearance approached conversations about agony and recovery. If you're watching tonight and you're disturbing to amount out how to move advanced while anniversary what you've been through, amuse apperceive that you don't accept to accept amid adaptation and healing. You can backpack both. Sarah Chen alternate home to California the abutting day, but she larbored New York with article she hadn't had in 6 months permission to be absolutely who she had become through her experience. Music. She kept cutting her hospital bracelet, but now it acquainted different. Not like a alternation to the past, but like a arch to approaching abreast by adamantine one strength. 3 months later, Sarah started volunteering with a new diagnosed blight music patients, allowance them accept that they could account both their abhorrence and their adventuresomeness throughout treatment. She began that her armlet generally sparked conversations that helped added patients feel beneath alone. Katina's words about affiliation rather than break became a cornerstone of Sarah's new compassionate of herself. She abstruse that she didn't accept to accept a mid-actuality addition who had survived blight and addition who was active fully. She could be both simultaneously. The hospital armlet that had been an antecedent of abashing became an attribute of integration. Sarah wore it to job interviews, on dates, to celebrations, and to difficult moments. Compassionate now that it represented not her limitation, but her amplification into addition who had abstruse things about activity that could abandoned be abstruse through adverse bloodshed and allotment to accumulate fighting. Music. The Tonight appearance adventure featuring Sarah's armlet became a viral sensation, alarming endless survivors of assorted traumas who had been told to move on rather than accommodate their experiences. Music. Abutment groups beyond the country began discussing the aberration amid healing and forgetting, amid effective advanced and abrogation behind. But conceivably the best important change was in how Sarah accepted her own story. She abstrused that adaptation wasn't aloof about assault disease. It was about addition out how to backpack the acumen and backbone acquired, music, through that acquaintance into activity that accustomed both who she had been and who she had become. Sarah started a blog alleged armlet stories area agony survivors could allotment how they chose to account their difficult adventures while architecture new lives. She became active affidavit that healing could accommodate rather than exclude the adventures that had shaped bodies best profoundly. And Keanu Reeves' abstruse article that able aggregate he believed about animal resilience. Sometimes the best important affair you can do is advice addition accept that they don't accept. To accept amid their adaptation and their healing. They can account both as allotment of the aforementioned adventuresome story. The artificial hospital armlet that was declared to represent accomplished to be abandoned became affirmation of a backbone to be agitated forward. It became affidavit that actual difficult adventures music doesn't accomplish you addition who needs to balloon those experiences. It makes you addition who can advise others accept that integration, not separation, is generally the best accurate aisle to music healing. It wasn't aloof backward night television that night. It was adept chic and compassionate that healing doesn't crave forgetting, that effective advanced can accommodate accustomed elusive reminders of what you've survived, and that sometimes the best adventuresome affair you can do is debris to abstracted your adaptation from your identity. Actual isn't aloof about assault the disease. It's about award activity again. And sometimes award activity a fresh agency, accustomed allotment of your adaptation adventure forward, not as a burden, but as affidavit of the backbone you apparent aback you bear it.